Hello friends and welcome to another Vedisi. Vedisi? Leave a comment, let us know. You can't because pronunciation. This is going to be another big long rambly one. Unedited, unfiltered, raw, homegrown, grassroots stuff. I need to stop filming these late in the day because I'm always frazzled and I tend to just talk crap, don't I? So I won't talk crap, I'm going to jump straight to it. The reason I keep looking down here is because my laptop is here. I have asked you guys to ask me some questions for a little Q&A about my book and writing, and you have done so. Thank you so much. I've got so many, there's no possible way we will get through all of these. So as per, I'm going to try keep it pretty chill. I won't screech with laughter or anything like that. So you can either use this to gain a huge amount of insight and wisdom into writing or it can just be something you have on in the background to keep you company. Maybe you're even drifting off to sleep. That's fine. I'm happy to be whatever you need me to be right now. So let's just jump right in, and I keep saying let's jump in and I haven't jumped in. Let's jump in. Okay, first question, and I'm getting a lot of these questions. Will there be an audiobook? Yes, is the short answer. The long answer is there was always going to be an audiobook, but that was going to kind of come a little bit further down the line. Things have changed. Not sure if you've noticed, the entire world has changed. And I had a meeting with my publisher and my agent. I say a meeting, obviously a video call, to talk about this whole thing because there's going to be a lot of ramifications for the launch of the book now. Obviously there was going to be like the book tour. I was going to do signings and readings and that kind of thing in person, and I don't know if they're going to happen still. It wasn't going to be till June, so fingers crossed that still happens. I have asked if we could move up the release of the date a little bit to try and get it to you sooner. Not gonna happen. But what I am really pushing for is for all of the people, my lovely book backers, I call them, all the people who pledged on the Unbound site to get the signed hardback edition. I'm really pushing to get that edition out to them as soon as possible. We're still hoping that's going to be in April, and we need to figure out how I'm going to sign them all. That's a separate question altogether. But another thing I'm really trying to do is get the audiobook done much sooner than planned. That said, you would normally go to a studio to record an audiobook, and recording it in my apartment might be a bit difficult because there are trains going by all the time. So I'm going to try, and yes, there will be an audiobook, definitely. I think having done the few videos now where I've been reading out the chapter, it's really made people more interested in getting an audiobook, which is great. I'm so glad for the response that I've had to that first chapter. So yes, working on it. Watch this space. Okay, let's take another question. Here's an easy one. What program do you use for screenwriting? I use Final Draft. That was an easy one. That was an easy one. How do you keep within word count / make something only take up as much space as it is allowed to? I was about to answer that from the perspective of writing a book, which is a bit of a different kettle of fish altogether, because you're obviously trying to write quite a lot of words. So I didn't struggle with word count with the book. If anything, it was very new for me and very daunting to write something that big. So if anything, I was worried I wouldn't be able to make the word count. I mean, I literally had a contract that I had to deliver so many words, and I ended up going over that in the end. But yeah, there was a lot of planning involved in that. I had to sort of think about how many chapters there were going to be and how they would break down by word count, and then allow as well for a bit of freedom, so not restrict myself in saying every chapter had to be a certain amount of words long. I knew that some would run shorter and some would run longer, and I had to sort of just give myself room for that. When it comes to writing something to an actual word count, I would say the most experience I've had with that is screenwriting. And it's not that there's a word count, it's more when you're trying to write an episode that needs to be a certain length, minutes wise, or when you're doing, you know, a short film or a sketch or something, particularly when you're producing it yourself, you have to also kind of be writing with a producer's hat on and thinking about the production costs. So for every single page of dialogue, every page of the screenplay, you're adding, give or take, a minute, depending whether it's action or dialogue. You're adding about a minute to the overall piece itself, and every minute is, you know, more time on set and more costs. So it's actually a really good exercise to produce and fund things yourself early on as a writer, so that you can get used to having to be economic with your writing in order to be economic with your money. So then, of course, the other place I really come up against it is where I've been writing, say, a pilot episode, and I've written quite a few pilots now that I've pitched around, and it has to be, say, 25 minutes long, because that's what the network are looking for. 25 minutes equates to, give or take, 25 pages. So knowing that just means you have to go in with that in mind. And I think what you always do, whether it's a book or it's a screenplay or it's whatever else, is you break things down into smaller parts. I'm sorry the camera's shaking. It's because my phone is propped on pillows on a gorilla pod on a bed. Vedisi. So with a pilot, for example, if you know you have, say, 30 pages, you're going to break that down into acts to begin with. So you know that roughly you're going to have 3 acts. You might have 4 or 5, but usually that means that you're breaking down the second act into 2 parts or whatever. So say you have 3 acts, it's going to be roughly 10 pages per act. And then you're going to break each one of them down into scenes. And then you start to get a feel for where your space is going. So whether you need an awful lot of space in the first act for character introduction, exposition, that kind of thing, whether actually you get through the first act quite quickly and you're into the second act and that takes up the majority, then what are the scenes in that are going to take up extra space? Have you got long dialogue scenes? You have to be aware that action scenes, when written down, can take up huge chunks of space, but actually on screen they're going to come out a lot shorter. So there's so many things to be aware of, but really my best advice with word count is to just plan ahead as much as possible and break things down. So know where you're going with it, you know, roughly know what your ending has to be. Give yourself, you know, even if it's just an essay for uni or an article you're writing, you know that you're going to need at least a paragraph to sum up at the end, you know, so you're going to give yourself the space to sum up, and then you're going to give yourself, well, I need this much for my introduction, and then the body of it is going to be this long. So it's always just about breaking it up, whatever format it's in, it's just about breaking it up. Okay, next question. What is your writing kryptonite? Good question. What's my kryptonite? I assume you mean what gets in the way of me writing or makes it hard for me to write. The first thing that comes to mind is exhaustion. Just because, yeah, there were times, particularly writing the book, where I'd just run myself into the ground. I knew I had a deadline coming up. I had put things off. We all do it. And when it actually came down to it, I hadn't given myself enough time, and I was writing frantically for 10-12 hours a day, and it was just really exhausting and draining. And it's, you know, I can do that on something where I don't need to be that creative, but when you're also trying to dig deep emotionally and be creative, tiredness is not your friend. My other kryptonite, and this is probably a bigger one for me because it's one I can control less, is other people. You know, those pajamas I made that say, I want to be where the people aren't. They were, of course, quite prophetic for the times we're in right now, but they were also, they're very true to me. When I'm writing, I really need space. I really need to just be in my own little bubble and be allowed to go into that space and sit in it and stay in it and feel it. And I can't be the things for other people that I usually am and that I wish I could be. Like I just find, you know, I don't have a lot to give at the end of the day, and that makes me like a bad friend and a bad girlfriend and a bad daughter and a bad sister and a bad everything. So I really just need time and space alone, so that at the end of the day, when, say, I have been writing for 10 hours and I am absolutely exhausted, when I come out of that, I just want to eat food, stare at a telly, maybe just stare into space, you know, have a bath, go to bed, switch off. I don't have a lot to give. I can't be very social. So yeah, other people needing me to be my normal self while I'm in that state is one of the hardest things for me, because I feel very guilty that I can't be there for them. And so I try to be, even though I'm not able to, and then we come back to the exhaustion thing. I run myself into the ground. So yeah, that. I love that the sun is coming around. I closed the blinds a bit, but the sun is sort of coming around and creeping in, so you're getting this. I'll tell you what, I'll keep talking till that light hits me. How do you know you're on the right track? Good question. How do you know you're on the right track? You just feel it. You just feel it. If it's bringing something up for you, if when you're writing, you're responding to it, and that doesn't necessarily need to be something heavy and emotional. You know, if you're writing comedy, if you find yourself chuckling along with it, if the image you're conjuring on the page seems funny to you in your head, or if it's moving you in some way, if you find that when you come out of it, you've really been in it. That's the thing for me, I think, is there were days where I would write for the whole day, and sometimes I'd be writing, say, a chapter set in Dublin, for example, and I would look up from my laptop at the end of the day and genuinely have to ground myself again. Like I really had to come to terms with where I was, because I was so in it. Like in my mind, I was there, I was in Dublin. I was with that person I was writing about, and I was experiencing those things that I was writing about. And having to come back is a little jarring. And I think when you have that, that's when you know you're on the right track. I hope that's a good answer. I've just repositioned slightly because that light is going to get really annoying. Okay, did you have an end in mind when you started writing? How did that change over time? Like, did you ever have to change an aspect because it wouldn't work? Oh my god, I had to change so many aspects because they didn't work. I think that's just what writing is. Yes, I had an end in mind, but so I know I've said this before, I'm sorry that I'm repeating myself. I said it in a video the other day, but the first chapter, the one I read here, it's called Muscle Memory, was never intended to be the first chapter of a book. It was a story. It was a short story I wanted to write about a breakup. And it wasn't until a long time after that that I seriously started to consider writing a book. And that chapter sort of came back to me, and it felt like something I wanted to explore further. Something about it felt unfinished, and I wanted to go further with it. But it just didn't feel right to move it forward in time. The chapter's about, you know, a woman who's just been through a breakup, and it wasn't interesting to me at the time to tell a story about her moving forward with her life, you know, single life, meeting someone new, whatever it might be. That just wasn't where I wanted to go. And something that had been coming up for me a lot, that has come up for me a lot in my life and continues to, You know, even after writing the book, it's a funny thing of kind of art imitating life and life imitating art, is the feelings that you go through when you go through a breakup and the thoughts that come into your head. And one of the big thoughts for me, as I'm sure it is for many people, is always, why were we together in the first place? You know, what kept us together, and why were we in love? Like, if we're so wrong for each other now, and the only reason you'll be breaking up is because, you know, it's not right anymore, so it's hard to see when it was right. And I wanted to explore that. I wanted to take this couple from this chapter and explore them. I wanted to spend more time with them. I wanted to see what they looked like when they were good together. And I wanted answers. I wanted to know why they had got together in the first place, and why they'd fallen in love, and why they'd tried for so long to make it work. And so that's why I decided to tell the story in reverse. And so, in answer to your question, yes, as soon as I decided to tell the story in reverse, it was like, boom, that was it. I knew exactly what my last chapter was going to be. I knew it had to be about the moment they met and fell in love, and I knew that they would be very different people by the end of the book, the beginning. That happens a lot. Yeah, so I had that in mind. Good question. Thank you for asking that. How to write without pulling too much from your real life? You're asking the wrong person. Moving on. That gave me a giggle. Where is the place that you write best, as in the places that give you most inspiration, or where have you written most frequently? Right here, baby, on this exact bed, or the sofa. I write best by myself. In a kind of pulling from the earlier question about not wanting people around when I write. I like to be alone, and I like to be somewhere that is comfortable and safe. And I should have an office, and I should have a desk, and I should sit properly when I write, but I don't. I sit with pillows propping me up and my laptop on my lap and my neck looking down, and I end up with a crick in my neck every single night. And I shouldn't do it, but I do. I guess bed is probably not the best answer to this question, but it is where I have written most frequently, and I think that's just because I haven't had an office to myself. If I had a whole room that was like just for me to work in, I think I probably would use that more. But it's more about the privacy and the space than it is about the furniture, if you get me. While I'm at it, actually, this just reminds me, I did kind of cover this in a video I made in, I want to say January. It was a spawn video with HP, but don't let that put you off. It's actually mostly about writing and how I write and where I write and tips and tricks for writing. So I'll link to that in the description. You might want to give that a look. So yes, I do also try and get out when I can and write from like cafes and that kind of thing. But when I'm in the thick of it, when I'm like really pulling on difficult emotions and, you know, really going there with my characters, I don't really like to be out. I prefer to be somewhere kind of private and comfortable for me. But definitely when I'm doing more like edit work and that kind of stuff, I love to get out and work from other places where I'm surrounded by people and atmosphere and that kind of thing. It's much nicer. Oh, this is another similar question to the one we just had, which I probably should elaborate on. How do you decide what real life experiences to put into the book and what events to create from fiction? There are actually quite a lot of questions here. Let's start with that one. How do I decide what real life experiences to put into the book and what events to create from fiction? That's a really difficult question to answer. I mean, the book is fiction, but nothing is ever pure fiction, is it? Like, you know, even if you're writing horror or sci-fi or fantasy, like, it all comes from real experience in some way or another. The characters are based on people we know or an amalgamation of people we know. And the thing I always say is, like, the events themselves may not be true. They may not have actually happened that way, but the feeling behind it is. So I guess the best way I can answer this question is to say that I try and always make sure that the feeling is honest. You know, I can't tell the truth about every single thing that's happened, otherwise I would just be, you know, telling other people's life stories that probably don't want me to tell their life stories. So I take what I need from what really happened, and then I sort of put that aside a bit, because it's not the plot that I need. I can write a plot from my imagination, but I can't imagine feelings. You know, does that make any sense? I will think of, say, a thing that happened and how that made me feel and how I reacted and responded to it. And then I will reverse engineer what happened, because I can't just divulge that much stuff, because a lot of it doesn't just involve me, it involves other people as well. So I try to sort of mine it. I try to drill down into the event and look at the feeling and do you mind, motorbike man? You should be at home anyway. Find the feeling or the nugget, the lesson, the theme, whatever it is I want to get out of that. And then I find a way to express that through a different event, so that I'm not just literally writing what happened in my actual life. I hope that makes sense. I say I hope that makes sense an awful lot. I hope all of this makes sense. Yeah. Is that a good answer to that question? Leave a comment, let me know. Was it painful to write and draw things up again? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it was painful. It's fucking torturous. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my entire life. There you go. No, genuinely. I mean, when I talk about, you know, the feelings being true, even if the exact events weren't exactly as they're described in the book, the feelings are real. And a lot of the relationships I describe in the book are similar to relationships in my real life. You know, a lot of the characters, as I said, are sort of amalgamations of a lot of people in my life. So they are a type of person I know rather than an actual person I know. But yeah, those were real feelings and real relationships, and a lot of the stuff that the protagonist goes through is stuff that I'm at least familiar with. And so getting her to those places meant I had to kind of go to those places. So that was, yes, it was painful, in a word. I'm pink now. I'm just pink. Probably fine. Do you think it helped you to heal? These are all questions from one person, by the way, but they're all really good questions. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it helped me to heal. Yeah. It's a really interesting one, and I think I might talk about this separately because it's a whole other topic, but I was going through therapy while I wrote the book, and actually my therapist ended up becoming a bit of a coach to help me through writing the book, because each chapter took on a life of its own, and there were chapters I had never planned to write, but they ended up coming out as a result of my healing process. So one was informing the other in a really interesting way. But the short answer to that is absolutely yes. It has really helped with my healing process, and not just about one particular event, but just learning to cope with grief in general, grief and loss and heartbreak, and it really helped answer the question that I was trying to find an answer to, which was, you know, why are you with these people to begin with? Why were you ever in love? Why did you keep trying? You know, in subsequent breakups, I've gone back to stuff I've written in the book, and it's really helped, actually. So thanks, past me. What is your favorite / least favorite personality trait of the main character? The main character is a version of me. So to talk about this is quite fucking Freudian, to be honest. What's my favorite trait about her? I'm smiling because when I think of her, I don't know, it makes me smile. I like her. I've come to know her, you know, she's like a friend. When I think about her, I think of, like, it's as though I'm thinking about a real person who I'm friends with. And she makes me laugh. I think that's it. She makes me laugh. She's got a really good sense of humour. And she finds humour in the darkest things, and she makes the story her own. She finds a way to make the story her own and to create her own sense of agency and autonomy. At least in the end. She doesn't for a long time. But okay, that's too dark. That's too dark. Can we fix that a bit? Look at that, we can. Okay. Yeah. So I like that about her. Her resilience as well. She's so fucking resilient. Good for her. What's my least favourite trait about her? I'm trying not to get emotional. Don't get emotional, Hazel. You're just talking about a character in a book. Everything's fine. I think she chooses to ignore some pretty big red flags for quite a while. And I don't just mean in the relationship. I mean with herself, with her mental health, with her own well-being. She's not okay for a long time, and she's not owning that, and she's not looking at it. She's avoiding it. She's making some bad decisions as a result. She's not taking care of herself. I think that's it. As I kind of kept talking and came to the crux of it, she's not taking care of herself. For a long time, she is doing things that are not in her interests, that don't serve her, and it wears on her, and she can't even see it. And yeah, it is hard to say that about her, because that is something I have disliked about myself. Not anymore, but I think when I say she's a version of me, I think she's kind of a version of a past me. So she isn't past me, but she's a version of past me. And yeah, there was a time I was ignoring my own well-being and ignoring all the signs that something needed to change. And I guess I have channeled that into her. But now when I read the book, it is the thing I find most frustrating, is I'm reading these passages where she's just not okay and she's not doing anything about it, and it kills me. Okay, let's move on. When was the moment you felt an emotional connection to your book? I'm not even gonna lie, just straight off the bat. It came from a place of emotion. When I wrote that first chapter, the moment I even conceived it, I was already emotional about it. It came from feeling. There was no point when it was like, this is about profit, or this is about success, or this is about fame or glory or proving myself or anything else like that. It was always coming from a place of feeling. So the emotional connection was there right from the start. What's your favourite chapter of the book? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. We're taking a tiny break, because I want to show you something. Just bear with me, okay? Just bear with me. We're just gonna travel over here. We're just gonna travel over here for a second, because there's a beautiful sunset happening outside my window. Look at that. And there's a little train going by. I know this is just not in any way, shape or form doing it justice. But that is a very lovely sunset that's happening outside right now. And I just thought you might like to see. And also it explains why the lighting's been changing so dramatically. Let's get back to it, shall we? That might just be the most hippy dippy shit I have ever done. I couldn't sit here and look at this beautiful, beautiful sunset and just not say anything to you about it. And that video won't do it justice. I'm still seeing it right now. It is, oh my God, those colours are insane. That is gorgeous. I get to see that every night. I'm so lucky. Oh God, now I can't see the laptop. Okay. My favourite chapter. My favourite chapter is a chapter called Summer Skin. It takes place around the midpoint of the book, and I can't tell you much about it because I want you to go into it knowing nothing. It's difficult. I have so many chapters that I'm proud of and that I love for very, very different reasons. But I think the reason Summer Skin is my favourite, the reason I say that is I found, particularly in the edit, and when I had to proofread over and over and over, you know, it did get a bit difficult to keep going back to the book over and over. And there are chapters that are difficult for me, you know, like emotionally, they're difficult to go back into. But the thing I found was no matter how many times I came back to it, every time I arrived at the page where Summer Skin started, I breathed a little sigh of relief and I felt calm and I felt excited. I felt excited to be back in it and to relive it again. And it's just a chapter where I feel, how do I describe it? It's like coming home. It's like, you know, at the end of the day when you come in and you get cozy and you're in your safe space, that's what that chapter is to me. It's like a safe space, and I just love spending time in it. I love spending time with the characters in it as well. And yeah, oh god, I can't wait for you to read it. I hope you love it as much as I do. Okay, another question. I always struggle writing conversations that feel natural, because whenever I write conversations, I think my friends and I don't talk that way. But I don't know how to write conversations that feel natural but are still book worthy. Any advice? Good question. That's something that I was going to say struggled with. I wouldn't say I struggled with it. Writing dialogue, thank God, kind of comes quite naturally to me. I think writing screenplays has really helped with that, because you get used to that thing that I'm talking about being economical, where, you know, you've got two characters on screen and you've got to get something across and you only have so much time to do it in. You want to say as much as possible with every single line, because when it's not prose, when it's not a book, when you don't have paragraphs of exposition to help you out, you have to say so much more with dialogue in screenplays than I think you necessarily do in books. So that was really good practice for me. So that's one thing I would advise, is maybe practice doing that. Even if you don't write screenplays, you know, practice just writing a page or two of a conversation where a lot of information needs to be conveyed, but you don't want it to be heavy-handed or on the nose in terms of exposition. So what does that look like? How do you do that? How do you get your characters to say the things that you need to say? And how do you get them to say stuff that is character affirming, we say? So by character affirming, I mean, if you imagine the stereotypes of characters, for example, if you were to put 5 people in a room, and The Breakfast Club is a really good example, you know, if you've got the jock and the nerd and the popular girl and whatever else, every time someone says something, it needs to be character affirming. It needs to come from a place that is believable for that character to say it. If you imagine this, like when you're watching something soon, imagine just swapping around the lines of dialogue. Like if I just took that line of dialogue and gave it to somebody else, would it feel right coming out of their mouth? Or would they have to deliver it in a different way for it to be their dialogue? You know, things like that I think are just really good exercises. So I think about it when you're watching stuff. Give yourself exercises to just sort of do it yourself over a couple of pages. And then when it comes to dialogue in a book, it's no different really. You still want it to be efficient. You want the characters to always be pushing their own agenda. Like, bear in mind, these are people, and when people talk, they have something to say that propels the conversation forward in their favor. Like, even if, you know, not to say that they're being manipulative, or they're trying to get their way as such, but you don't open your mouth to speak unless, you know, what you have to say is coming from a real place for you, or you're trying to achieve something with it. So what is this character trying to achieve? I find that helps a lot as well. So there's so much here. This could be a whole other video, really. Writing dialogue could be a whole bloody book in itself. Another small but really helpful bit of advice I can give you is to do it out loud. So whenever I'm writing dialogue, I have a conversation. I have a conversation out loud with myself between, it's usually two, but sometimes more characters, where I get into the mindset of that character and I talk, and then I have the other person talk back to them, and I say things and make sure I'm writing it down in a natural way, like the way I've actually said it, like using the words and intonation that I've used. Yeah, say it out loud, record it back if you have to. I find that's a good little tip as well. If you just have the conversations out loud, record it and listen back, you might find a few little nuggets or gems in there. Okay, any more questions? Oh, this isn't a question, but it's lovely. Hey Hazel, thanks to you I just finished writing my book. Congratulations! Hearing you read your first chapter made me feel really inspired to write the last few chapters. Any tips for when I do the second draft? Okay, so there is a question in there. Any other tips for when you do your second draft? Kill your darlings. I say it all the time, but I think it's true. You know, you need to just get rid of anything that doesn't need to be there, anything that's boring or uninteresting or unnecessary. And by that I don't mean that everything needs to be fast paced and it needs to be a page turner, and like, it's not that you can't linger with a character. I mean, a lot of my book is literally just being in a woman's head and, you know, hearing her thoughts on things, and kind of it's quite patient, I think, a lot of it, and slow. There's nothing wrong with that. But as you're reading it back, if you're finding you're bored in parts, get rid, because other people will probably be bored as well, or run it by somebody else and ask their opinion. And the other thing is, you know, don't be too precious. You might find when you're editing that, oh, there's a really good joke that, you know, you'll lose if you make this edit. But comedy comes second. Little things like that, you know, sentences that you're just really proud of, or jokes, or little flourishes, while they are lovely, they're not central. So if you need to make a change that is beneficial to the plot or the character development, that always comes first. There are so many more questions, and I have a feeling I'm still going to get more questions coming in. So I will probably just do another Q&A. Not tomorrow, but at some point in the future. I think I'll do another one about writing, because you guys have so many good questions, and I love talking about this stuff, and I want to do more. And let's be honest, we're going to be here for a while, so there's no harm. Okay, I'm actually going to leave it there and stop talking. Why can I never stop talking? It's like trying to get an Irish mammy off the phone. It's always like 12 goodbyes. I hope you're safe. I hope you're well. Hope you're enjoying the videos so far. If you have any questions for the next round of this Q&A, leave them in the comments to this one, and I will hopefully get to them next time. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Slán.